If you're looking for adventure, you've come to the right place. That's this week on Motoring 2000.
TSN's Motoring 2000 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them, and Midas Car Care, the way it should be.
The other day, Land Rover invited Motoring to do a little off-roading in their new Discovery. My response, well guys, I'm really not big on the off-roading. I'm a kind of a highway guy, you know, with the stereo cranked up. And they said, yeah, but you know what? This will be different. We'll guarantee you a different experience when it comes to off-roading. And you know what? They weren't kidding. Calling it the Canadian Adventure, Land Rover gave a group of auto journalists an opportunity to drive the 2000 Discovery Series 2 into the back roads of Northern Ontario.
The whole idea behind it is to bring journalists in to feel and experience a vehicle in its proper element, which we believe is the off-road side. And of course, with the Series 2 this year, 2000 model year, we have a few additions to the model. We want to demonstrate them. Discovery is really the product that gives us the volume. And with the new vehicle that we have now that was launched in '99, and this year with the 2000 model, which is a carryover, it's going to give us like 80% of our volume. So really we depend on it. It's a vehicle that will fit in the range of many of our competitors. So it brings us more closer to the mainstream of the sport utility.
The first day was fairly routine, giving journalists a chance to get comfortable with the Discovery and utilize some of the vehicle's new technology.
One of several unique features on Discovery Series 2 that was introduced in '99 is the hill descent control. Through a series of sensors, those used by ABS, the vehicle is able to regulate the speed between 7.5 and 14 kilometers per hour on a downhill descent to give you total control, which gives you steering capacity, which is something that you really need in a situation off-road.
And what is the driver doing?
The driver is actually doing something very unnerving. We ask them to take their foot off the brake and put them just flat on the floor and just steer the vehicle down, which is something that people are not used to doing.
After a night of heavy rains, the Discovery's headed into much more difficult terrain. The vehicles were only equipped with all-season tires, and it became clear as we got deeper into the woods, they would be no match for the slippery conditions with or without traction control. So Brian, what are you going to do now?
I'm just wondering about this, Brad. If I go back, I'm going into the ditch, eh?
Straighten.
All right, build it up. Now let go. Stop.
Finally, with the help of a winch, the Discovery was set free, but it was only a sign of things to come. Hey, Bruce, so what do you call that? What's all that about? That just off-road?
Exercise and off-roading.
Go! Stop!
Well, everything seemed to be going fine, and all of a sudden we hit the mud again, and we started to lose a little bit of traction in the mud. And then once you get to that point, you lose your momentum, and once you lost your momentum, then you're scuppered. It's back to square one.
You're gonna try again?
I would like to try again, but I think we're going to let an expert try it now and see if he gets any further than I do. Be interesting to see. That's one more. More speed, I think, is needed.
That's it.
We're not going to get this convoy through.
But in the end, while the Discovery Series 2 was certainly up to the off-road task, the overnight rain had turned the course into a quagmire, and the all-season tires simply could not overcome it.
The other issue is that we have one winch cable that has decided not to work, and we have a second one that is probably borderline at this point. So instead of getting stuck, we're going to actually use this opportunity wisely and turn the convoy around. I think people expect Land Rovers to do these things. I don't think they expect themselves to do these things, and that's what we try to impress on the people, is that to go out and enjoy it and experience it. Learn the limits of the vehicle and the limits of themselves in the natural environment and have some fun. I think we've had that over the last couple of days for sure.
Will that be one finger or 5? On the highway, there's a big difference. That's coming up later on Kenzie's Corner.
You know, they say all good things come to an end, and so it is for the run of the Toyota Tercel. After almost 20 years and 400,000 units, it's about to be replaced by this, the all-new Toyota Echo, a vehicle that's going to redefine entry level.
The new Echo is suspended on long-stroke McPherson struts up front and a twist beam design in back. Nothing special, but the results exceed what's expected. The ride is compliant and comfortable, yet delivers nimble road manners. When combined with a decent rack and pinion steering system and 175/65 R14 tyres, the response to input is fast, positive and predictable. Now that's something you cannot say about the majority of Echo's competition.
Torque entry level, and you usually torque bare bones. Well, not so with Echo, as it gets variable valve timing, a technology that was once reserved for far more expensive automobiles. The advantage of variable valve timing is simple. It gives you a broad torque plateau, putting the performance in the everyday range.
While the 108 horsepower and 105 pounds-feet of torque generated by the 1.5-litre twin cam do not look overly impressive on paper, the addition of that variable valve timing, a set of headers and a special two-way muffler combine to deliver great throttle response. It also reduces emissions, meaning Echo meets low-emission vehicle status. Add to that a good manual transmission and you now have the new economy car benchmark. Even those that opt for the automatic transmission will not be disappointed. The 4-speed electronically controlled box delivers smooth, seamless shifts, and on long grades it does not hunt between gears.
Two things strike you about the Echo immediately. First of all, it feels as though you sit on as opposed to in the car, and secondly, there's nothing but dashboard behind the steering wheel. Rather, the gauges sit higher and to the right. Now, neither one is intuitive at the beginning. However, once you sit in the seat, you realize it's very comfortable, and the gauge location, it's actually more logical than the conventional.
The rest of the interior layout also strays from the norm in many respects. First, the level of standard equipment exceeds what one normally expects to find. Everything from a 4-speaker AM/FM cassette to split folding rear seats are in place. So is plenty of interior storage.
While the exterior dimensions of the Echo are very close to those of the old Tercel, the interior story is anything but the same. The tall stance gives you abundant headroom. Legroom, well, it's not an issue, and because they've raised the seats off the floor, there's actually somewhere to put your feet. All in all, it's a very clever and comfortable package.
stopping power comes from a front disc rear drum design that delivers easily modulated stops. During the test we averaged 105 feet from 80k. The lack of anti-lock brakes is disappointing, but given the price sensitivity in this segment of the market, the decision is understandable, even if I don't agree with it.
It used to be that when you bought a subcompact car, you got a little car. Little in terms of packaging and little in terms of performance. However, that was before the advent of Echo. With Echo, whilst you still get a subcompact car by definition, it's anything but little.
Okay everybody, what we're faced with here is a bridge which is damaged. We have half the bridge support out, so we have a very, very narrow area in which to negotiate the vehicles across. And it's not how you drive so much as what you know, the vehicle. It's a combination of all those things coming together. It's not about sort of slamming through the bush. It's about looking at the obstacle, looking at what we're faced with, assessing it, and then negotiating the safest possible way, and at a slow speed. Remember that Land Rover philosophy, as slow as possible, as fast as necessary. Very, very important in a situation like this.
Some people may be watching though and think we're all crazy.
Oh, undoubtedly, undoubtedly.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns how long you should warm an engine up for in the wintertime. Local newspaper had a quiz this week, and they asked that question, and as far as I'm concerned, they gave the wrong answer. They said at least 5 minutes. Well, it doesn't always require that length of time. For example, today we've got clear cold weather, but no frost on the windows, no snow to worry about. So a minute or a minute and a half is definitely enough time to idle that engine before you drive it away. As a matter of fact, late model cars with fuel injection don't run fast enough or rich enough for any length of time to generate a whole lot of heat in the engine. They warm up better when they're under load, in other words, driving away at a moderate speed. But your limiting factor in all cases should be visibility around the car. If it takes 5 minutes to clear all the windows of snow and ice, then that's how long you've got to run the engine for. But you should, of course, first go out there with your snow brush and take all the heavy debris off there, all the heavy snow, and scrape off all the frost. Then wait for a little bit of heat to come out those defroster vents before you drive away. And one more thing, in wintertime, make sure you've got a towel at hand inside the car, because once in a while you'll get out of a thoroughly warmed up car and get back into it, and within a block or so the windows will fog up. If you've got a towel handy to keep them clear, you're in safe condition. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Well, I suppose the trouble is, it's like any other sports person. If you spend 30 years doing something, it's hard to let go. I mean, really, you should step away and do something in administration. But you see it all the time, don't you? The ex-footballers or the ex-ice hockey stars, what do? You know, if they're lucky, they get a commentating job or something of that kind. But at least in car racing, you can still carry on, for quite a long time, which is what I'm doing. Sport's growing tremendously. We've probably 120 cars here this weekend, and next year there'll be 150, and the year after 200. And this is what happens typically in North America with the vintage racing. We get grids now where they're turning away cars because there are too many cars. Lime Rock, 300 cars. Laguna Seca, 300 cars. They just turn the cars away. So it's been growing enormously over the last 5 years, and there are in fact about 30 different vintage racing organizations that organize these events.
Tell me what you're driving today.
Well, today I'm basically driving a car called a Sadler, which was designed and built by Canadian Bill Sadler in 1960-61, and it's a fearsome beast. This is the first time it's raced since those days, and yesterday was the first time really out in it. It's got a 400 horsepower Chevrolet small block engine behind the driver, very unusual in 1961. It's got Jaguar disc brakes, and it's a very short, small car.
I'm from Southfield, Michigan, which is right outside of Detroit, Michigan. And the car we have here is a Lola 163A. It's a 1969 Can-Am car. It was the factory car in that year and driven by Chuck Parsons. Competed in the Tire Series. They competed here at Mosport, and I believe finished third or fourth at this race. And they've always been my favorite cars. the sound of the big 8-liter motors. There's nothing like them, never will be again. It was an era of totally almost unrestricted racing. Just had to be a covered car, 2 seats, equal sized wheels, and at least a 3-liter motor. No wimpy motors around this series.
You know, the one thing about off-roading is you gotta park the ego at home. You guessed it, I'm stuck. In fact, I'm very close to the edge here, so they're gonna have to winch me out. So why don't we take a break, head to the garage and join Bill Gardner. And Bill, no smart comments from you.
Brad, I'll tell you, about 79 or 80, I just had to have a 4-wheel drive truck. All my buddies were buying Broncos, so I ran out and bought a Chevy Blazer, and couldn't wait to go off-roading, you know, so we went looking for a place to go off-roading, and the reality of it is everywhere you pull up, there's no trespassing signs, private property, keep out, no motorized vehicles. After about a month, you finally find a place you can take the thing. You go in there, you get it stuck, you scratch up the sides of it, you bust parts, and it takes you a week to clean all the mud out from underneath it. They kick you out of the car wash even because you're dropping these clumps of mud in there. Forget it. I went out and bought an off-road motorcycle, and believe me, if you want to go off-roading, they make a 4-wheel drive truck look stupid. They're a fifth of the price, 10 times more capable, and they're pretty hard to hurt. You bang up your body a bit, but I got some problems with mine. I didn't practice what I preached, left the gas in the tank for a couple of seasons, didn't use it, and no stabilizer, so I got to take the carburetor apart. Anyhow, we got a couple of letters this week, and we're going to answer them. First of all, a guy with a 98 Toyota 4Runner. He says he's got the automatic transmission with overdrive, of course. He says he drives it, of course, in overdrive on the highway, but he wants to know about driving in the city. Should he leave it in overdrive or defeat the overdrive? Well, certainly, I live in the suburbs, and around here we reach a great enough road speed, even though we consider it almost the city. Our road speeds are typically great enough that we can get into 4th gear and reap that fuel economy savings that you get with an overdrive transmission. However, if you're really in severe stop-and-go driving, low speeds, typically below 60 or 70K, defeating the overdrive will give you more engine braking and a little bit better drivability, because when you lift off the throttle, the thing will want to slow down. So driving it in low traction circumstances like heavy rain or slush, snow, etc., defeating the overdrive will also make it more balanced, because as you lift off the throttle, it'll want to slow down. You won't have to use too much brakes. The rest of the time, leave it in overdrive and save the fuel. The other letter concerns a guy with a Chrysler 3-liter V6, and he asks, I want to know if taking apart the throttle body and cleaning it would improve the performance of the car. Well, it certainly will. The throttle body is this area right here where the engine takes in all its air. Now, in order to get to it, the only things you have to remove is this duct that starts at the air cleaner box and takes clean air over to the throttle body of the engine. So you have to get it off and get it out of the way. Once you've got it out of the way, you can see the throttle body, and that brass-colored blade in there is the blade that opens when you step on the throttle. You can see it opening. It's at wide open right now. And in order to clean it, you just get yourself a can of air intake cleaner like this, and you spray it into this area. Give it a good spray all the way around the perimeter of the bore and spray the throttle blades, and then get an old toothbrush and simply scrub the back side of the blade, the top side of the blade, and the entire throttle bore. You can see some black crud that's sort of washing out of that area, and that is basically just deposits that have got in there via the crankcase ventilation system. Even though there's no fuel handled at this point, it's just clean air and a little bit of crankcase vapors, and the crankcase vapors have oil in them, and they tend to form a carbon in this area. Now, this throttle body cleaning will only improve the performance on cars with multi-port or port fuel injection. Cars with throttle body fuel injection, this will not improve their performance at all. They spray themselves clean as they're running. But a car like this, which is a whole lot of today's cars, big gain to be had. And some cars are worse than others. 2.8 and 3.1 GM V6s, for example, are quite prone to stumbling and stalling when the throttle gets dirty. Same with the 3-liter Chrysler Mitsubishi V6. That's quite a common problem for it to stumble and stall when you come up to a stop sign or stop light. It just wants to cut out on you. So think about cleaning this area once a year, or it's certainly at every tune-up interval. A lot of people overlook it. Now, in terms of giving you more raw horsepower, I don't know if our viewer was asking in terms of sheer performance or speed. Only a marginal gain to be had by cleaning this, but certainly a big improvement in the drivability. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2000.
If you're big into cars, check out motoringtv.com. And while you're at it, download a copy of Autopilot. Autopilot software searches out the matches to your automotive interest and makes the most of your online time.
You know, road rage is like the weather. Everybody talks about it, but nobody does anything about it. Now, we hope that none of you indulge in that typical road rage behavior, you know, the aggressive cutting in and out and tailgating and shaking your fist and honking your horn at people. Although who among us hasn't at some point tried to squeeze somebody out or maybe cut somebody off because they were driving like an idiot? Try not to do that, okay? But even if you're not actively road raging, maybe your driving behavior is a carrier of road rage. Maybe you're driving too slow in the left or middle lanes. Maybe you did cut somebody off. Maybe you made a turn without doing a signal. Try and watch for that stuff too. But maybe there's another approach. Maybe instead of not doing bad stuff, maybe we should try to do good stuff. Maybe there's some guy trying to get out of a driveway onto a crowded road. Stop and let him in. What's it going to cost you? 20 feet? There's no big deal. Because after all, even on the busiest highway, you're probably only going to see one or two acts of true stupidity. Well, if you commit one or two acts of random kindness, it'll all kind of balance out. So give that some thought as well. After you, sir. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Remember off the top of the program we met that cat? Well, he's a big cat, a Siberian tiger, 10 months old. His name is Kashan, and he resides with a lot of other cats at the Jungle Cat World in Orono, Ontario, who protect endangered species. And they're supported by Land Rover Canada, its retailers, and some Land Rover owners through the Endangered Species Fund of Canada. Well, as I mentioned off the top of the program, off-roading is not usually my cup of tea, but I got to admit, over the last couple of days when you do it in a car like the Discovery Series 2, all those creature comforts you pay for on-road transfer to the off-road and you don't end up losing your lunch. In fact, it's been kind of fun, and they did promise us an adventure, and that's exactly what we got. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
You can see that front wheel sticking to the ground. And though we're not timing it here, you can see that he's getting through this slalom course a lot quicker. So instead of a tip over occurring, typically the truck is going to slide and hopefully protect the operator.
Actually, this is the first, but it feels awesome. Feels great.
TSN's Motoring 2000 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas Car Care, the way it should be.